And good day from wherever you are. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV, the North American edition. Today, we're talking about the secrets of high impact messaging. I'm joined by David Priemer. David is the founder and chief sales scientist at Cerebral Selling. He's also author of the book Sell the Way You Buy. David says people love to buy things, but they hate talking to salespeople. If we want to win the hearts and minds of our customers, we need to do things differently. David, welcome.
Rob, it's great to be with you here. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So please tell us a little bit about you, your journey into sales, and where you are today.
Yeah, besides my made-up title of Chief Sales Scientist, which you'd be surprised. A lot of people reach out and they're like, I've never heard of anyone with that title before. It sounds interesting. But yes, like many of you probably listening out there, I got into sales by accident. At the turn of the dot-com boom, I ended up joining a startup and ended up falling in love with sales. I was a research scientist. I love to learn. I love to, discover and unpack the secrets of the universe, so to speak. And I decided to apply that to the world of sales because I realized that sales was this amazing, nuanced profession that I ended up doing for, I'm going to, say yada, 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 20, some odd years. But I realized that when you tell someone you're in sales, you become the enemy, unfortunately. Like I said, people love to buy things, but they hate talking to salespeople. And so, I always was struck by so many of the things that we tell our teams to do and so many of the plays that we execute in the sales world are just things that if we stopped and thought about it, would just never work on us. Like, that's why people don't like talking to salespeople. And so I thought, well, is there a way that we could use our science and engineering skills to kind of unpack the pathways by which people make purchasing decisions to help people execute this amazing profession with the conviction and passion that it deserves? So that's kind of where it all came from. 4 startups later, 3 acquisitions. I couldn't think of anything better to do with the second half of my career than teach the art and science of modern selling.
I'm so glad that you put it in that term, the art and science of modern selling.
Mm-hmm.
In your view, how much of it is art? How much of it is selling?
Well, I sometimes say like it's neither. It's about like the why, meaning I could teach you a killer discovery tactic or a really great question or a really great objection handling, approach. But if you don't use the right tone, the right approach, like the right nuance to how you ask the question, how you follow up, and how you manifest enthusiasm and are curious, then that tactic will fall on deaf ears. And I remember there was a story that I tell in the book about how this is like a good example of a tactic that we used to teach our reps back at Salesforce. So my third startup was acquired by Salesforce, and I spent 5 awesome years at Salesforce, seeing how the sales machines were built, operationally and culturally at scale. I used to run small business sales for the Eastern US for Salesforce. And so we would have these great enthusiastic reps and we would say, hey, you know what? There's a really great tactic that when a customer, let's say, starts objecting about the price, because at Salesforce, we were not the cheapest solution, right? Rob says, hey, look, David, I love your solution, but it's a little too expensive. We would use this reverse psychology tactic and basically say, well, hey, hey, Rob, maybe you should go and buy Microsoft, or maybe you should go buy that, or maybe you should do nothing, right? And it's meant to kind of, push you away and by virtue kind of hopefully draw you back in as you start giving reasons and rationale why maybe you wouldn't go with a competitor. But I was on the receiving end of an angry call from a customer who said, calls me up and says, David, what's going on? You're telling your reps that you don't want our business anymore? I'm like, hold on a sec. It's not that we don't want your business. What's going on? And when I went to the rep, what I realized the rep did was they used the tactics. So this is the art and science. They used the reverse psychology tactic. So Rob says, hey, David, we love your solution, but we can get Microsoft at half the price. And that rep said, well, why don't you just go buy Microsoft then? Right? But they said it in kind of like this offensive, jerky kind of way. And so I say, yes, like the science behind a reverse psychology tactic is sound, but the art is how you execute that tactic. And so I say, whether that tactic works or doesn't, you always have to ask yourself, like, why? Why did it work? Why did it not? So you know which side of the art and science you need to focus more on refining.
So that leads me to question the sales training aspects of that, and how can we get better at the fundamentals of sales education? First, before we even talk about getting better at it, let me ask you, what do you see as the fundamentals of sales training and sales education?
Basic things like how you describe what you do. When I say, Rob, like, what do you do at your company? What do you say? It's like, it's the simplest. I have an article I wrote. It's called How You're Messing Up the Easiest Part of Your Sales Playbook. When someone asks you, what is it you do? So foundational things like messaging, discovery, objections, objection handling, negotiation. I don't get too much into social selling or virtual selling or some of these, more modern, account-based, selling and so on. I don't focus as much on that because at the end of the day, the sales process is really a human interaction between two people. And sometimes we kind of get ahead of ourselves with getting into all these fancy tactics. Meanwhile, we don't really understand that the words that we use and how we say them to other people make a big difference. So that's really what I focus on in my practice.
I actually worked at a startup once. They brought me in to build their sales enablement practice from scratch. And sales enablement for many is sales training. It is so much more, but this was a sales training focused role. And I was having a conversation with the VP of sales. And I said, I believe there are four key aspects of onboarding and ongoing training and development for the salespeople. And you are great at two of them, and you ignore the other two. I said, the four elements are your product and how you position it. And you do that very well. Your people know that very well. There's always room for improvement, but you've got that. Mm-hmm. And your systems, your CRM, your phone system, your all of the technology that you use to do the job day in and day out. They've got that. The other two areas where I want to really focus the onboarding and ongoing training and development are communication and sales, the practice of sales. He said, no, Rob, I don't want any of that. We hire them because they know how to sell. Is selling a one and done training kind of thing?
Well, I think you know the answer to that question.
Well, of course.
But the challenge is that the world of buying has changed so much. Never mind in the last, I used to say this pre-pandemic. Oh, the world of buying has changed so much in the last 5 years with the advent of social media. Then there was a cosmic shift during the pandemic. And now we're living in a post-pandemic world where the world of buying and the way people kind of focus and purchase things now is way different than it was before. I have customers, clients who say, I don't know, like, we have this great business case, this killer ROI. Shit, maybe we even did a proof of concept where we installed our technology on the customer's website in their environment. We ran it and we brought them this pile of money and said, here, Rob, like, we made this for you. Now buy our product. And they still say no. So there's been a massive shift in the way people buy, but the way people sell in general, not to make an overgeneralization, has stayed the same for a long time and for lots of reasons. The thing that I talk about, this is actually the first chapter in my book, Sell the Way You Buy, is I call it the Cobra Kai paradox. So if I say Cobra Kai, do you know what I mean by Cobra Kai?
The Karate Kid?
Yes. Okay. So I have the Paul Rudd genes, but I'm 48 years old. So I was born in 1975. So 1984, Karate Kid comes out, and I'm 9 years old, and I love it. And I think back to that movie because I talk about this in my book. So much of sales involves the passing of tactics from sensei to student, right? Like from the teacher to the student. And if we learn from the wrong sensei, then we just grow up to be jerks, just like the kids in the Cobra Kai. They're not bad kids, but they chose to learn from the sensei that taught them the wrong way. Versus like Daniel LaRusso goes a different direction. So, I actually don't blame bad salespeople, of which there are many. They are not bad people. They're not bad human beings. They're just executing playbooks that they were either taught by their sensei years ago or that worked 5-10 years ago that no longer work today, but they don't know what else to do. And so part of when I think about the art and science of modern selling and buying is thinking about how do we moderate our tactics, not just for the situation we happen to be in, like in that sales cycle per se, but at this point in time. And the perfect example, kind of like what I said off the top, is like a good business case is no longer enough to win. Having good ROI, no longer enough, right? But salespeople are flabbergasted. Like, oh my gosh, I put together this ROI, I did this proof of concept, and like they're still not buying. I'm out of ideas. What should I do? Meanwhile, that's not really what people are buying at the end of the day, is that ROI. So these are some of the shifts that people need to make.
I've often heard that people buy based on emotion and justify with facts. ROI is a fact, but you haven't helped them with that emotion piece beforehand. I wanted to bring in a couple of comments from the audience. Bob Britton says, we keep treating sales as a science, deconstructing it into smaller parts. And when we try to put it back together, the pieces that get left out are the human aspects. And Alex Abbott says, agreed, David. So why don't businesses change their sales approach to align with buyers? So many say they do, but they really don't. What's your view?
Yeah, well, so there's two different things. 100%, Bob, I agree that the human aspect often gets left out. The words, the tone, the approach, like something very simple, like when we're going through a discovery process with our customers and we have a list of questions. I'm like looking at my fictitious list of questions. I have this list of questions here that I want to ask you because I was told by my boss that I need to know like the budget, the timing, the medic, the bant, all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, I don't appreciate that you're not going to tell me anything, because why would you? I'm like, I'm the enemy. Why would you divulge the secrets of your business? Because you're always wondering what I'm going to do with it. And I'm asking you oftentimes these questions in a way that feels like this is like my standard shtick of things that I ask everyone, and it doesn't really make you feel special at all. It feels like a polite interrogation. So 100%, Bob, that even with like the most basic of tactics, teaching people the human communication aspect of it, like how you execute them, is so important. The second question, though, around like why don't people change? 100%. I don't know why people don't change. People in general have a status quo bias. Like something tends to work, so we keep doing it, and when it stops working, we still keep doing it because we think we know better, and we haven't sometimes seen how the landscape has changed. And one of the other references I actually give in the book as well, if people are familiar with the book The Matrix, I mean, Matrix shoot is like 24 years old now, but in The Matrix, at the beginning of the movie, Keanu Reeves is completely unplugged, right? But then as he goes through the movie into the end, he starts seeing the Matrix as like the ones and zeros. There's the patterns, right? Like there's the reactions, there's the emotional intelligence that in sales we sometimes fail to apply to our customer interaction. So, this rep who told the customer to just go buy Microsoft, when I approached the rep and I said, hey, like I got this angry, nasty call from the customer saying that they said you told them to go buy Microsoft. And his reaction was, isn't that what we were supposed to do? Like, I thought that was the training that we were supposed to say that, right? Like, shoot, okay, yeah, yes, those are the words or the implication, but that's not the tone. That's not the approach. So sometimes we just get too fixated on the tactic or the outcome or like the kind of the rigor, and we don't stop to think, is this even working? And what's like the nuance behind it? And that's actually why, so thank you, Alex, for the question. That's actually why I wrote Sell the Way You Buy, because the entire the second half of the book is tactics, like messaging, discovery, objection, tactic. The first half of the book is really understanding the pathways and mechanisms by which human beings make purchasing decisions, by what you make purchasing decisions, so you can align your sales motion like that. And the quick answer is we just don't stop to think about that enough.
So Adam Gray shares with us, ROI proof is no longer enough. That's scary, he says. And you were just saying that we are selling based on those proof points and so on. That's not how people are buying or why people are buying. So why do people buy things?
The number one thing, and I think it was mentioned earlier in the comments, people buy feelings 100% of the time. And we not only know this because, existentially, we know this because from scientific research, when individuals have suffered, for example, traumatic brain injuries, and the part of their brain that's associated with the expression of feelings is damaged, they can no longer express feelings and they can no longer make decisions. They don't know what signals to avoid. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. He doesn't get into the science behind it, but that's the idea. So we buy feelings. So even though, Adam, the fact that proof or ROI is no longer enough is true, the question is, what are people really buying? Now, I'm not saying ROI has no place. When I have a very simple diagram, which I will, hand gesture to you now in Sell the Way You Buy. Imagine ROI is this little sphere. There's a bigger sphere that encompasses it, which is called value. And value is a subjective feeling. And here's the perfect example. If you ever put together a business case, if you're listening out there, if you're ever in a position to put together a business case for your customer, and what do? You say, okay, you're going to spend a whole bunch of money on this thing that I'm selling, and here's the case. If you buy this, it's going to save you this much time, money. It's going to increase all these things. I've made certain assumptions based on your business. I've done my research. I've done my homework, and I'm thinking, okay, great. I've crunched the numbers. This is going to give Rob an ROI, return on investment, which is an objective calculation of, let's say, 4 months, 6 months. This thing is going to pay back. And that's what comes out of the model. And then imagine now that you are the salesperson. And before you present this business case to the customer, you kind of step back and you think to yourself, you know what? I don't know if Rob's going to believe this. You know what? The ROI is good. It's a little aggressive. You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch some of the variables. I'm going to make them a little bit more conservative. I'm going to reduce this number, that number, so the payback is now 12 months. You know what? I think that's more reasonable. I think Rob will buy into that. And I pause and I say, what the hell are you doing? Now, all of a sudden, you're tweaking the numbers to do one thing, to make the customer believe that what you said is going to happen is going to happen. That's the only thing that makes a difference, that matters as far as the ROI. I can put together cases all day long. The only thing that matters is whether you believe that thing that I said is going to happen is going to happen. And the last time I checked, belief is a subjective feeling, not an objective statistic. So that's why the ROI, the proof points, it's not enough. We need to more heavily lean on the feelings that customers are buying when they buy us.
But it's not the feeling of the product itself necessarily, because as you had started and said, it's about feelings. I'm thinking back to the Salesforce and CRM model.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the customer, I don't have any feelings towards a CRM. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I feel nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you then sell to me based on feelings about something I have no feelings about?
100%. Well, I'll tell you. So having worked at Salesforce for 5 years, and I train teams at Salesforce today, here's like an example. One of the reasons why people buy Salesforce, or a big reason, is because it's the market leader, right? It's the Gartner Magic Quadrant, #1 for X number of years. Does that mean it's the best? Does that mean that, it's the most easy to use, that it's the most cost effective? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means #1. So for the customer who says, you know what? No one ever got fired for buying IBM, right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean IBM has the best solution. It just means that I'm not going to lose my job over this decision. So I'm willing to pay more money for a product that may not even be the best because it's the safest. So when you think about what am I buying, I'm buying the feeling of safety and security. I have, my Salesforce client, they tell me that, for example, sometimes they will win deals with high growth startups because those startups want to appear to their investors that they are buying first class grade A technology to run their business. And they like the fact that, by buying Salesforce, they get to tell that story, right? So it's not the CRM is good or bad or whatever it is. Like maybe it's good, but it's the feeling that comes along with it. The same way that I could argue that if I said, hey, you know what, you could go buy like the big guys, but the reason you're going to invest in my product or service, even though we're like this little boutique shop here, is because we're going to give you outstanding customer service. We're going to give you input into the product roadmap. We're just down the street. You can speak to someone when you call. And I even have like mid-sized software companies that say one of the reasons why people would buy us over, for example, Intuit, and Intuit sells a lot of, products like QuickBooks and so on, is because when you call us, you can get someone on the phone, right? The experience is the product. And when you're buying us, you're buying all of those feelings that come along with it. So the reality is, if I'm a vendor and I can tap into the things that are important to you from an emotional perspective and sell you those things, conversion rates will increase. And again, this is not like, I want to get out of this space of here's what I do, or here's what I did, here's what you should do. I want people to prove to themselves that this is not like my opinion. This is like scientific fact with research and data to back it up, because otherwise we end up with Cobra Kai tactics. That's what I refer to them as, where it's just, here's what worked for me. But if we understand these pathways of what people are buying, the feelings and so on, conversion rates will increase. We'll be able to execute with more conviction, and you'll be able to better serve our customers. So that's how the whole feelings weaves into the story.
So I understand better that feelings part and that safety. Nobody ever got fired for IBM. I teach that to my marketing class these days, and that's an expression older than me. So they look at me like I have three heads. But I understand, for somebody who's concerned about safety and job security, that would be a decent approach. How do I know what feelings matter to them? How do I, as a salesperson, discover the values that are most important to them? I mean, I could directly ask, but I don't even think they overtly know sometimes.
Yeah. Well, so this is the thing, right? Hopefully, as a salesperson, you're not operating in a vacuum. Like sometimes I don't have to guess what's going on in your world. Like, even though I want to do discovery and understand that, my job involves speaking to people like you every day, over and over again. So not only have I uncovered what those pains are across the industry from speaking to a lot of people, but I have learned how to tap into a tactic or approach I refer to as like the unknown unspoken. Meaning, these are problems or feelings that you have because I'm the doctor. I see patients like you all the time. But you may not know what those feelings are or be like as in touch with them as I am, because this is something new to you. Like like as an example, one of the things that I focus a lot on in my practice is working with young sellers. Like young, enthusiastic sellers. When I used to run small business at Salesforce, I had tons of young, enthusiastic sellers who were calling on buyers whose job they've never done, right? This is what actually most of sales is. So I came up with a term for this. I actually wrote a Harvard Business post on it, and I talk about this in my book. I call it experience asymmetry, like where there's this imbalance. Like, I've never done your job. I'm kind of scared that I'm not adding value. It's like the way I describe it. It's like the way my kids sound when they're about to hit me up for something that they think I'm going to say no to. That's the way you sound, right? Now, the laughing, I love the laughing because it means this is a concept. It's called processing fluency, meaning I don't have to explain it to you, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, when I describe this to a sales leader, and of course, like what I do is I help sales teams, I train their teams in some of these tactics, right? So I said, do you ever listen to your reps on the phone? Do you ever hear, don't pay attention to the words, but you ever hear like the fear in their voice, the fact that it sounds like a kid asking a grown-up for something I think they're going to say no to? And all of a sudden, this kind of look comes over their face, and they're like, oh my gosh, yes. Like either, yes, you realize that you have that problem, but no one's ever really put it quite that way before, and now you get it, right? This is a very powerful tactic I refer to as assumptive priming, which is where like I bring the problem to you because this is what I see every day, right? But I can use that priming tactic. So now I'm getting a little advanced, but this is actually the highest converting tactic I teach in my book. I can use that tactic to give you like a menu of problems that you are likely experiencing based on my interactions with people just like you. And the problems are specific, they're nuanced, they're well understood. And when I give you this menu, chances are, like, and I say, like, are you seeing any of these things? Like, I'm not assuming you have them, but I'm injecting them into the conversation to see if you bite. So this is a great way, rather than asking someone, oh, hey, like, what problems are you having? I'm going to bring some problems to you. And it's a calculated risk, because if you don't have any of these problems, then we may not be in business, right? But if I'm a salesperson and I don't know the problems that you experience every day, then why am I doing this? Like, the people that sell me things, and so if you want to sell me something, here's the trick. As a solopreneur, I spend lots of time in my business doing things that I have no business doing, that I should really hire someone else to do, right? And if you came to me and you whispered quietly in my ear, you said, hey, David, I work with tons of solopreneurs like you who tell me that they are stuck doing tons of things in their business. They know they have no business doing, but they just don't know who to hand it off to, right? I'd be like, take my money, whatever it is, right? So being able to kind of tap into the psyche of what people are focused on in your industry, like, it shouldn't be like what's keeping you up at night? And that's part of the way that we add value as sellers, is to say, look, I work with dozens of companies just like you. I'm glad you liked it there, Adam. I work with dozens of companies just like you. And here are the things that I hear. But the things that I hear have to be detailed, nuanced, sometimes unknown or unspoken. It can't be, oh, people are trying to do more with less, or people are trying to, like, get really great service at low fees. Like, that anyone's going to say that, right? If you want to see me as a seller, as someone who's adding value, you expect me to bring a certain amount of expertise and nuance to the conversation. And by the way, like, even with a young salesperson, there are ways of injecting them with these kinds of conviction-based tactics.
So that's the secret. Understand your audience and speak to some of the things that are ailing them before they even verbalize what's ailing them.
That can be powerful. And by the way, like, it's not just verbalize. If I ask you, what are you focused on, or what your problems are, you won't tell me these things. And not because
Right.
you're withholding the information. It's just that you're not in tune enough with them. Bob's asking here, are we talking about imposter syndrome? Like, a little bit, but it's a lot about the manifestations of that imposter syndrome, fueled also by the tactics that we arm our reps with in the field. Like, often we say, like, go give the, like, and again, I'm going to pull out Ricky Bobby and say, with all due respect to our friends in marketing, oftentimes when there's a challenge with how reps are executing in their sales motion, I say, can you just send me the slides? Like, when your reps go out and they give a presentation to someone, like a first call, can you send me the slides that you arm them with to go have that discussion? And oftentimes the slides are horrible. They're very product centric. They're very us centric. And the reps know no different. They're like, oh, like, we have an awesome product and we should be talking about it, and, like, how we can help. And here's our logo list. And, like, customers don't give a crap about that yet, right? So there's an element of, yes, imposter syndrome, but it's enabled, like, with a lowercase e, by the tools that we give people, everything from, discovery checklist to first call decks. It makes them kind of feel like they have everything together, even though they don't. So I'd say it's a little worse than imposter syndrome. Yes, Bob, it is that bad. But look, the reality is, like, selling is hard. If selling was so easy, we would be paying high school students minimum wage to do it, and not very smart, educated people millions of dollars a year to be able to do it effectively, right? Like, this is a hard, deceptively hard job.
David, this has been great. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more?
Yeah, well, I give away too much stuff for free. So if you find cerebralselling.com is my website. I have tons of articles, videos, YouTube channel by the same name. You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to hit me up. I'm always happy to chat and friendly. And my book is called Sell the Way You Buy, and you can get that on Amazon or anywhere you buy books.
Fantastic. David, thank you very much. To our audience, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your participation. This has been another edition of Sales TV, the North American edition. Until next week, have a good day, everyone.